I'd call up Standard Tap and William, and he was pouring the beer very regularly, different beers, but and so I'd get that order, and that was so many beers, and then I'd call different people, and then like sometimes I wouldn't call people because I was like kind of full, and then like Tom Peters from Monks would be like, "Hey Brian, what do you got this week?" And I'm like, I got this. Oh, I'll take one of those. What else do you have? I'm like, shit. I got this. And so I'm driving down 76 like this with the whole thing. And people are honking and pointing to the back of the, I don't know if they just because it was kegs or they were actually worried for my safety.
Yeah.
But I always felt better if I went to Standard Tap first and got rid of 5 or 6 kegs that the truck would.
Before you went to Center City, yeah. Welcome back to the Brew That Podcast. I'm your host, Richie Tevlin, joined as always by Evan Blum. And tonight we have on Brian O'Reilly. I think everyone in the Philly beer industry knows who you are. But from Mainstay Brewing, we want to talk about, your time at Mainstay, your time at Sly Fox, and kind of everything that there is to know about Philly beer abuse. I mean, you've been here a while. We just talked about, everything about beer, but you just said, you realize how little you know about beer, but hopefully we can take away a little bit of knowledge from you.
The master becomes a student, right?
Exactly. Cool, but welcome.
Good to
I
see
know
you guys.
we've been talking about having you on for a while, but just like everyone else, schedules kind of get mixed up.
Yeah.
But we want to start from the beginning. Sly Fox, I guess, was the beginning, but we want to talk about what's before the beginning, I guess, or your actual beginning. Like, what was your start into brewing?
So I have a degree in philosophy and literature. I went to a small Catholic college in Ohio.
Okay.
And that college had a program in Austria, so outside of Vienna. And if you kind of knew you wanted to go there, you could save some core classes, some history classes, some theology classes, some things like that, and go take them there. And so I did that, and it was a pretty awesome experience. We had 4-day weeks, and every weekend, like literally I'd have my backpack in my last class, and I'd walk to the train, and I visited 11 countries.
Wow.
So cool.
And I came back on the train overnight from Paris, and the next day we studied Sainte-Chapelle and King St. Louis in history, and I was there the day before. We also on our spring break, went to Italy as the whole college, the whole class went there, and had medieval history on the streets in Rome. It was amazing. So
you're not looking at textbooks, you're looking at what's actually
it was an awesome experience. But during that experience, I think I remember distinctively having wheat beer for the first time. And I handed it to my friend, and I said, "There's something wrong with this beer. Here, you drink it." And he was a really great dude from New Orleans who said things like "shall" and, had a big, and he drank all of it. He would never let any beer go to waste because he'd have to go to confession for weeks if that happened. But I kind of fell in love with beer and the culture of drinking there. Mm-hmm. And we would walk a mile to a local pub, and I got really good at the little German that I knew that I started studying when I was there. I got to learn a phrase called "das stimmt," which means that's right. And I remember many nights talking with Austrians in broken English, and then I swear they'd all have the 5th beer or the 6th beer, I don't know which one because I wasn't there at the beginning. And then they'd start talking to me as if I understood them perfectly, and they were speaking in slurred language and faster than I could even comprehend if they were saying words I knew. And sometimes it would come up to a question where the pitch would go up at the end of their phrase, and they'd stare at me. And there was just nothing to say. I couldn't even tell them, "Hey, I'm sorry, I didn't really understand everything," because they wouldn't understand that. So I'd look at them all in the eye, make a little suspension there, and I'd say, "Das stimmt." And they'd all laugh, and they'd always buy me a beer afterwards. And I don't know if they realized...
The infinite beer glitch.
I don't know if they realized that I didn't understand, and they thought it was funny, so they buy me a beer because I understood beer and the culture, or if I actually said something that was succinct to their conversation and they thought it was funny. But it worked all the time if you took your time with it. But I kind of fell in love with beer when I moved back to Ohio to finish out school. I had a bunch of friends, and I had some friends that were homebrewing, and they were really smart, like dweeby kind of kids.
Yeah.
And I was like, on Sunday, like I'll come over and I'll homebrew with you guys. We'd like grill and homebrew and
just hang out. Yeah.
And they understood so little. They couldn't explain anything. They were doing things and I don't know. My brain just went, wait a minute. I need to understand why.
Mm-hmm.
So I started reading, and I kind of became interested and kind of a leader in that group. And so at the time I was playing a rock and roll band that we were like an original band, and we had some success on the college level where we'd play shows and make money, and the whole school would come.
That's cool.
That is really cool.
And we released a couple albums when I was in school, and I borrowed money to pay for the recording. And when I graduated, I paid my parents back. I actually made some money
Really?
back. Not a lot. No one was making money, but like we weren't losing
Do you still
money.
play music?
Not much anymore.
Okay.
Not as a rule, but I did it all the time then. So
Yeah.
it'd be kind of like if you homebrewed every now and then, and somebody said, "Do you still brew?" You'd be like, "Well, I used to brew for a living." So it's. But I moved back to the Boston area, Greater Boston, where I was from, and
Yeah.
I was. One of the guys moved back. We resurrected the band with some other musicians I knew, and I was substitute teaching if I got called to do that, and I also started volunteering at a brewery. So the first brewery I volunteered at for like 38 hours, it was Peter Austin Brewery, where we did crazy things like squish the yeast in our hands and, British style brewery, and they were everywhere in New England. It was in Derry, New Hampshire. And so I did a 38-hour internship there, and I didn't necessarily want it to come to an end, but I started to really feel like they were, like I was happy to be there working for free, and I was learning a lot, but then I stopped learning after 38 hours, and it seemed like they were...
Because they were like the homebrewers.
They were busy working and just
Mm-hmm.
not, but then it was like I had my own shift, and no one was... I was like doing the job. I was making beer, and I said, "Hey, I'd love a job here." And they said,
Yeah.
"Oh, we're not sure about that." I said, "Hey, thank you so much." And I went to work at another brewery, but again, volunteering for Phil Markowski at Brewer's Beer House. So,
Bill Markowski. I feel like I've heard of him.
yep, Phil had been kind of the key guy at New England Brewing Company.
Okay.
And then moved up there to open Brewer's Beer House, which was a brew pub that was right down the street from the AB plant in Merrimack, New Hampshire. And I remember I was so green. Guys would come in and with these crazy Belgian beers I had never seen before and ask Phil what he thought of them. Well, they were the guys from the AB plant, all the higher up guys, and they were pretty smart and articulate, and they were talking to Phil about Belgian beer. And I would just try to understand. And we were also brewing some beers back then that were like secret beers for larger breweries that he had connections to. And
Like contract brewing for them?
Like trial brewing, designing beers for very large breweries.
Oh, wow.
So, but I was just like an assistant there, but I really liked how Phil explained things. And it was night and day between the first job
And it was
and the
just you
second.
two? It was just you two?
Just the two of us, yeah.
Okay.
But it was like a kind of moderately sized brew pub, a
Okay.
couple hundred seats. And so I guess in Phil kind of was my mentor. Certainly the way he thought about beer made a lot of sense to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I learned everything I learned from him. I've just continued
To build off of
that kind of thought process.
Okay.
So it was kind of short-lived. I ended up then, after working for him for a week, getting a meagerly hourly rate, and
But you're professional, like actually professional now.
I got paid. Yeah,
Yeah.
not a lot. But then Phil ended up not too long afterwards, only like a month. Ended up heading to Southampton Public House, which I think he had some good luck there with kind of spreading the Phil Markowski word about beer.
Yeah.
So I stayed on to kind of keep that place going under his tutelage, but it didn't go too long. So I then stayed on to dump beer, which is a task that if you haven't done, there's unique tools you need to be able to dump that much beer and actually not like drown in foam. And also Tim Morse from John Harvard's Brew House, he was the corporate guy, super cool guy. He came up and I gave him a tour of the equipment to look at the equipment. And
why? Because you guys were selling the equipment at that point?
The whole place was going belly up,
Okay.
and I was just there working for the owner trying to tie up loose ends.
Okay.
So Tim came to look at the equipment and quickly turned into a job interview, which was great. And luckily, I ended up then working for him shortly after at John Harvard's in Harvard Square, which was the original John Harvard's, and what a juggernaut of beer. The amount of beer they sold was pretty amazing, like 30 barrels a week in a brew pub, all right there. And
to college kids?
It was some college kids, some Cambridge kids,
Okay.
some adults. It was just a really cool place and a good spot, and they did a really good job with the food, comfort food done with a little flair, and just everything clicked. It was a really healthy brew pub. It wasn't awesome as far as the brewing equipment or the sizing or we had it in the summer.
Was it actually microbrewery equipment back then, or was it like this old dairy equipment that we were using?
Sometimes they were the same, but
Okay.
I guess it was a pub brewing company, like little brew house
System, yeah.
But we had a bunch of British Grundies. So we had two 15-barrel tanks
Yeah.
that were old style. They were in a 50-degree room, but they had glycol jackets and no insulation. And then we had all these Grundies. So when the head of the Charles would come through and they had that big rowing event, they would literally drain 7 barrels of pale ale from a Grundy in one day. So you'd go in the next day and there'd be like, maybe not 7. So if it held 7, we'd filter it on a Friday. Saturday morning we'd go in and there'd be like a barrel left. So we'd have to filter more.
And you're pouring draft beer out of the Grundy?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So
a giant beer bowl.
yeah. And all the beer was actually brewed with lager yeast. It was steam beer at the time. So it was, and Tim used to work for Anchor.
Okay,
So
wow.
there was a history there. So it was pretty cool, very busy, kind of crazy. And another funny story there, I think it was the 4th day on the job, the brewer didn't show up. And we had this weird thing where we had enough power to the building to either run, it was an electric boiler, but like an electric steam jacket kind of thing.
Yeah.
And we had enough power to either boil or run the air conditioning. But not both. So the brewers would get there at like 4 in the morning or 4:30 in the morning, and you had just enough time to do this really, really short brew, single step infusion, run off, make sure you don't run into problems, get it boiled, and then you'd go to this big switch, clunk, and then the air conditioning could turn on an hour before the restaurant opened. So I had this choice, like I couldn't get a hold of anyone, but somebody came to clean the restaurant, I could get in. And I'm like, I've only done 2 brews here, but I either brew or we don't brew today. And they were so busy, I'm like, well, I'd rather beg forgiveness for brewing than say I sat around for 3 hours. So I mashed in and brewed. And later I found out that there was a lot of conversations about that.
What did you make? Do you remember?
I was probably their pale ale.
Okay.
Was what we brewed every other time. So.
Do you remember what it tasted like? Like, did you think you nailed it, or was it a little rough?
No, I don't think it was much different, but it was, like I said, they were so busy. If the beer tasted maybe, the beer was good. It was always true to brand. But if there was something a little funny about it, by the time you figured it out, it was gone. So it was a unique, it was kind of awesome in that way.
That's the fun part about pub brewing is like beer goes fast.
This was super fast. I have the opposite issue now.
But you have
It's
enormous tanks.
Enormous, and it's
Yeah.
around for a while, so you better get it right.
Yeah.
Because it won't be like, well, maybe next week I'll take a look at that, and then it's gone, and you don't have to,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, you've had lots of trial and error, I guess, to fix all your mistakes now. So you were still in Boston. How did you make the transition from Boston down to Sly Fox?
So I worked there for, I don't know, like at least a year, if not, year and a half. I should have
And
brought
after
my
that,
resume.
were you then brewing consistently after that? Were they just like,
Yeah,
all right, you're just
yeah. There was a
going
lot
through
of
this
work.
now?
There was a lot of
Okay.
work to do there. Yeah, everybody that was there was brewing and doing stuff. And then I agreed to move to Cleveland to become a head guy for them.
Okay.
So, but in the interim, I went to Long Island and I taught someone to brew there. So I was at Long Island for a month getting the brewery set up, and that was the first time. That was very interesting. A lot of macho construction guys, and I was a young guy. Didn't really know how to handle that, but I got that brewery up and running, and then Tim also was a veteran and was involved with that. I just tried to help, do everything he told me to do, and then I went out to Cleveland. I was better prepared then because I had just done it. And got that brewery up and running. And then, so I was there for 2 years in Cleveland. And it was a great brewing community. There were so many good dudes out there that made great beer. And Great Lakes was just the granddad of them all, and all their brewers were super nice. And there was one point in time where we were on the east bank of the river there, the Cuyahoga River, right? And just by the lake. And if you walked outside our door, there was a tremendous amount of breweries you could potentially smell wort from. I think it was like 6 different breweries at one time that you couldn't.
All right there.
Yeah. I mean, you walk up the hill, it's this place. There was a brewer on premise that was over here. On the other side was another brewery. So it was really, some of that was fueled by craft beer growing, but the other thing was liquor licenses in the state of Ohio were pretty expensive. But if you invested in brewing equipment, it was about half the amount of a liquor license. You could get rolling, and you could get a full addendum to that license for cheap. So there was a lot of momentum. It meant that a lot of that changed in the next 2 years, but it was pretty cool.
What year is this?
I should have brushed up on this. Maybe it was like 98. 98. And Cleveland also had, there was so many projects going on that were funded privately, but also building low-income housing that really didn't look like low-income housing. So Diamondback was a brewery that had opened before I went there, and they stole the title from Wynkoop. You've probably been to Wynkoop in Denver, which Wynkoop is a brew pub with a big restaurant, but then they have a large upstairs with I don't know if it's 20 pool tables. Wow. But they for many years were the biggest volume brew pub in the country. Diamondback stole that title. And then eventually lost it. It's like these breweries would open up and they'd be gangbusters because people from all over the area within an hour's drive would come to Cleveland and mob these new places. But not enough people lived there to then support. They'd all go to the next one.
Yeah.
So, but it was pretty awesome. We used to, actually I should try to institute this in Philly, but the brewers would get together unofficially at a place that was not downtown, but a little bit west, called Der Braumeister. It was a German restaurant, and they had 6 German draft beers, and your job, if people hadn't tasted all the beers that night, it would be one Tuesday a month, you'd have to get the next beer, and we'd quickly determine which ones tasted really good, and then we'd all drink those for the rest of the night. But it was kind of nice to get together and drink German beers and talk about beer and talk about brewing and fixing solving problems.
Was there a theme to the breweries there? Was it mostly German breweries in Cleveland or brew pubs? I mean, you said you were talking about a lot of the places that you've been at were brew pubs. Was it just most places that were breweries back then were brew pubs?
That's a good question. There were a couple packaging breweries. Great Lakes certainly was packaging, and then there was one on the other side of the river.
But it sounds like you were brewing English ales or pale ales at the brew pub you were at.
So John Harvard's did their pale ale, which was kind of more like an American pale ale.
Yeah.
I guess somewhat inspired by Sierra Nevada, but I think it took on its own spin, its own life of its own.
Yeah.
We also did a more British-ish IPA, although it was Cascade and East Kent Goldings, so kind of a blend, called Old Willie, which was kind of a fun name. And this might seem obscure or obtuse to people now, but like, or to beer drinkers or brewers, but like IPA was like a sexy, crazy beer to brew back then. So I remember conversations at Harvard's where they'd say, I think we need to brew more IPA. And the surveys would come back. They'd have people fill out surveys. And they finally realized that the most requested beer was fruit beer. But the least requested beer was IPA. But when we brewed IPAs, the most drank beer was IPAs. When we brewed fruit beer, it was the least drank beer or the least consumed beer. So it took a while to figure that out.
People always request wheat beers. I feel like every brewer I've been at, like everyone, like the customers, why don't you brew this wheat beer anymore? I'm like, well, because you guys don't drink it.
I know there's so many beers I'd love to brew that it's hard to do because I just need people to drink it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I guess you're known for German lagers.
So
Wait, when did that come on before Sly Fox, or did you?
I always, I certainly got exposed to lager beer when I was in Austria.
Yeah.
And we visited Munich too and went to Oktoberfest. Went to Oktoberfest, was unable to have a beer at Oktoberfest.
No way.
Couldn't get one.
Why?
That's not that uncommon. I've been to Oktoberfest twice. I've never had a beer at Oktoberfest.
Why?
You have to have your ass in a seat to get a beer.
Really?
Yeah. And that can be more difficult than, imagine, people walking through this big fairground and like, I wanted to hold my buddy's hands so that I would not ever, this is before cell phones. I can't say I'm at this tent, I'm at that tent. Like, how will I ever find him again? I don't even know. One of the guys get the hotel and we all have to sneak into that single bed room later. I don't even know where it is,
Yeah.
So at John Harvard's, I kind of made it my passion project to brew pills.
Okay.
We had dish bottom tanks, and I would actually kreuzen each beer.
Cool. Yeah.
And get way ahead and get myself in trouble. But I just really wanted to do it.
That's cool. So you're still in Cleveland at this point.
Yeah.
Then I guess you were a head brewer and you wanted to kind of move up. So like kind of what's next after?
There were some lease issues, which
Okay.
is amazing, but never assume that someone else knows more than you do about something.
Yeah.
Even if they have a degree in it so there's some lease issues, and the restaurant wasn't doing gangbusters, but certainly was healthy for down there. And it seemed like it was not going to continue. So while I was at Cleveland, I met a chef from the main line in Pennsylvania, and he had opened the John Harvard's here in Wayne.
Okay.
And he was heading back to do a brew pub project in Collegeville and kind of recruited me.
What was that called?
It was called Two Roads.
When was that? I grew up in college, so I never even heard of that.
Really?
Yeah.
So
was it?
what are we talking, like 2005, 2007?
Okay. I was sixth
It's
grade.
now where Trouble's End is.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, I knew that there was something before that. I guess I didn't realize that was
Yep.
what that was.
So I came out, we bought some equipment and got that brewery running. And I kind of put my nose to the grindstone, just made beer there. There was a lot of cool things going on
In Collegeville?
in that place.
Okay.
We did live music. We had some great acts come through there, like bands like Marat when they were just becoming a big thing, or some of the-
that's where the Bloodhound Gang is from.
Oh yeah. And there's a lot of Collegeville. So there was a lot of cool things going on. There was a lot of good things to the food program. It was pretty happening for a bit. And that's kind of where I got to know some people in the Philly beer scene. Jack Curtin was a beer writer out there, and he kind of came in and berated me like he berated everyone, and got to know him, and he'd write a little bit about the beer, and I got to know Lou Bryson, and I think Brandon Greenwood, who I don't know if he was at the place in Sam Adams, sorry, Nottinghead. I don't know if he's at Nottinghead yet. Maybe he had been at help me out, the place before.
This is before my time.
Yeah. But he came in, I think they were on the way to some place to get like boots out at some country store, like out that way.
Yeah.
With Brendan from, I guess he's at Clarkville now, but that whole restaurant scene, and they liked my beer. And I think that helped because they told people about it, and then we had some extra beer, and I started selling to. I had been to a beer bar in Philly, and kind of liked it. Just seemed cool. It was Standard Tap.
Okay.
They had just opened, and I kind of asked William Reed if I could pour some beer from him, and if he'd like to try it. And he's a reasonable guy, and he did. And he liked it. And he started pouring the beer. So I'd load a truck of beer and head down to the city and sell him some beer. And then eventually Two Roads kind of changed a little bit, and there was a lot of investors that were happy, unhappy, and the owner kind of, I don't know, made some decisions and stuff, and became apparent that wasn't going to continue for me for a while. So I had made friends also at Sly Fox through Corey Reed, who was a cool guy who just ended up drinking the beer and liking the beer and talking beer, and introduced me to the Giannopoulos family. And then I talked to them. I said, hey, man, how's it going? And I ended up taking a job for Victory at that point in time.
What were you doing there, just brewing?
I worked in the cellar.
Okay.
It was really different.
Downtown?
Yeah, it was really different back then. Pad filter and
yeah.
Yeah, there was some, but Ron and Bill were awesome to work for and really treated me well. It was a lot of work. They were very busy. I also worked I told them I wanted to work the bottling line.
Why is that?
Well, they snickered just like, because I hadn't done it yet.
You just wanted to experience it. I've never worked, I've worked shifts on the production line or packaging line, but that's the only part that I haven't touched. And I would be lost if I had to run one of those things.
Yeah. So while I was there, I solidified a deal to go work for Sly Fox, and they were awesome guys, and they knew, I told them about it. And so I think I did make work there. It was weird, like only a few times. And I was happy to do anything.
Yeah.
But my request was, can I work on the bottle filler?
That's
which was like throwing yourself to the wolves.
Yeah, everyone in the packaging line was just like, can I go work in the brew house? And
yeah.
You certainly can go down there if you want.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you're like collecting all the experience from every piece of the facet.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, obviously it's work. You have to work.
Mm-hmm.
So you're welcome to absorb anything you can when you can pick your head up from quickly putting bottles into the cases or whatever you're doing. But you have to keep up. But yeah, that was a great experience for me. Certainly learned what it was like to work for a production brewery. And it was very different than it is now. Things are always evolving. It's
definitely. If you've been to Victory down in town, it's like that whole place is like built upon each other. It's like it wasn't like a planned out thing. They started there, and they grew into 100,000 barrel brewery there, and it's kind of oddly set up.
Yeah, I mean they had that Pepperidge farm.
Yeah.
So the floors were kind of like slope, but not really. And
yeah,
I think it took me a while to figure out how to like squeegee just the right spots to get everything to clean up, but it was beautiful tile.
Really good at, like spraying the floor with the hose.
Yeah, and then squeegeeing just this one spot. But
yeah,
but no, it was very busy. Worked really hard there. It was a good experience, and I certainly learned also from just sharing beers with Bill and Ron, and the other guys there too. There was a lot of great brewers there that came and went.
Definitely. So then you started off at Sly Fox, and Sly Fox was still a brew pub at this point, or was it?
They were a brew pub that was just doing like a couple hundred barrels.
Okay. So were you the only person that?
I was the only person, and it was one of these. So I, like any brewer would do, the first thing you do is you go in and you clean for weeks, just trying to get ready to make the first beer.
Yeah.
I made the first beer. It was a Scottish ale, like 2% roasted barley, and called it Robert Burns Scottish ale, and put it on tap. And like I was like, okay, now I got some breathing room, and I can start, get. But like the only thing that then would sell was the Scottish ale. All the other beers wouldn't. So it took a while to get things rolling, but it was good. Got that rolling, and started selling beer to some of the people I had started to make contacts with in Philly.
Yeah.
Once we had enough beer.
Yeah, we obviously just had Erin on, and
Yeah, she was telling us.
she said that you showed up one day in a snowstorm with a couple of growlers of beer to sell it to her, and she it was like before cans or any of this stuff, and you were just
Yeah, we did growlers. We did like little hemp cord with like a little like booklet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's funny, but I guess you were doing all the brewing, but then you were also selling the beer for them, and
Yep. And I'd call up Standard Tap and William, and he was pouring the beer very regularly, different beers, but and so I'd get that order, and that was so many beer, and then I'd call different people, and then like sometimes I wouldn't call people because I was like kind of full, and then like Tom Peters from Monks would be like, "Hey Brian, what do you got this week?" And I'm like, I got this. Oh, I'll take one of those. What else do you have? I'm like, shit. I got this. And so I'm driving down 76 like this with the whole thing. And people are honking and pointing to the back of the, I don't know if they just because it was kegs or they were actually worried for my safety.
yeah.
But I always felt better if I went to Standard Tap first and got rid of 5 or 6 kegs that the truck would.
Before you went to Center City, yeah. That's funny.
So that's how that started.
Nice. Yeah. And then I guess the time at Sly Fox was just built. It seems like everything at Sly Fox was just like what I think of Sly Fox: the Hell's Lager, the cans, the goat races.
We grew, and they had a lot of belief in what was happening. So we put a new facility in Royersford, and we bought a Barraplan brew house. Where was that from? From Ohio, from Hosters. And got that installed and started growing there again. And we had another pub there. And then kind of outgrew that. And then we built the facility that they're in now in Pottstown.
Yep.
So when I started, it was a few hundred barrels. When I finished, it was 25,000. So that was a good run.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like making the transition. And again, talking with Aaron with Other Half, it's like there's not many breweries that can go from like the local to the regional size brewery, and it's like it is a hard task to kind of break through that barrier.
It's harder now.
Definitely.
think.
People, it's very segmented now,
but I also think it's harder and easier.
Because you know what you're doing. Like before, you were like creating, you were like trying to figure out how to do it. Now, like the roadmap is there. You can't do it.
It's like I think, I don't know. I shouldn't say I think, but it feels as if somebody opens a local brewery in a town, and sometimes I think the beer's okay, but I think they get more credit than maybe I would give them. And then I also think there's regional breweries that make really good beer, and I hear people say, that's all right. I'm thinking, that beer's really spectacular.
I couldn't agree more. It's
so that the regional breweries, we'll call them regional, but I don't know if that word's appropriate for every, but they get less credit than I think they deserve, and the smaller breweries get more credit. And I don't know what that means, but it's tricky.
It's hipsterism. It's the larger you get, the less cool you get. Mm-hmm. It's like they're making a better product. It's like the whole point of you supporting these small businesses is that they grow and they get better. But at some point, it's like you're not cool. You're not making good beer anymore. But like, no, they're doing better than they have ever done. I agree with you also. And like it's funny to like look at on tap scores, so like some of these beers that like I think are perfect.
Oh yeah.
And then some other beers where it's just like not so great. Someone gave me a 1.5 the other day. I was like, all right, really? Let's see what scores they give other people. I opened up, and the next beer after mine was a bacon flavored beer, and they gave it a 4.5. And I was like, all right. This was like, I can't win.
Well, I love the score that says, whatever, it's a low score, and they're like, beer was thin, beer was this. Well, I don't really drink lager beer anyways. I just like porters and stouts. It's like, oh, okay.
Yeah, it's.
But we, like in my time, Beer Advocate was the thing.
Yeah.
And that's where all the energy was. There was no Untapped.
Yep.
And I do think, like Hill Farmstead certainly had some momentum with Beer Advocate. I think Sly Fox did at the original pub when I started brewing there. There was some guys that were really active there, and they were cool guys. We drank a lot of beer together.
Yeah. No, it's a weird thing. It's like I think having people involved in it and stuff like that, you need they're fans of craft beer. You want people to be involved and stuff like that, but it is kind of a cesspool. It's like kind of this weird situation.
I don't know if I've told this story on the podcast before, but we were at a brewery filming some stuff one day, and just this group of people was rolling dice to see what the Untapped score would be for that beer. And I'm like
as a game to see how close it would be, or did
no,
they?
That would be their
to
rating
rate it
based off the dice roll. It's like, obviously, and I think they knew what that meant because they were pretty knowledgeable about beer. And it's just like, but why you doing it then? And it's like, no, there's too much power in the Untapped score itself that reflects on the breweries.
Well, and it gets funny too when this hasn't happened much, but we had a bar one time tell Mainstay we poured beers that score above this on Untapped, and I was like, oh. I don't know, it wasn't that high, but I'm like, there's so many great beers that are lower than that.
I know.
Quintessential world-class beers are lower than that.
Yeah, it's I think it's like a blessing and a curse. I think it's become more negative than positive.
Yeah.
But, if you are a brewery that has consistently above 4, then it's the golden touch. It's like anything that you do at that point. It doesn't matter if you make good beer or bad beer, they're going to keep giving you above 4s.
Well, in my time, the whale of a beer, is that what they call it? No, white whale.
Yeah.
The white whale of a beer was West Lettering, right?
Yep.
So you couldn't really get it, but you could get it. It was one of those funny things that you could never count on getting it, but if you really wanted to get it, you could get some, and it was usually expensive.
I've never had it before.
Yeah. So the story is that there was a guy that lived down the street from the monastery. You could only buy it at the monastery, and he was buying his allotment. I don't know what it was, 2 cases a day, and palletizing it and shipping it to America. This is before the internet was that common, right? And so, it would come through, but it just wasn't that available. So when people would get this bottle, it was like, oh, we got to drink this together. We have to do it special. We could have a beer beforehand, but not too many beers. We have to, everything has to be just right. Wait a minute, we got to put jazz music on. We got to dim the lights, right? And so how could that beer not score well? Right?
Yep.
It was it was the belle of the ball, but there wasn't even a ball.
Yeah.
And it is a beautiful beer. All their beers are beautiful, and it's a special place. But the monks eventually got the internet and figured out what was going on and stopped that guy. So it's less available now.
St. Barnabas was contract brewing for West Lettering for 100 years.
Is that true, or is it West? It might be West Lettering. That's a great beer too.
Yeah, but if they were brewing that beer, they should be experts. They brewed it for 80 years or 100 years. Shouldn't they be able to make the same exact beer? But somehow that beer is not considered the best beer in the world, even though it's the same exact beer.
Yeah, if you paid a lot of money for it and you waited a long time, it's got to taste better.
It's part of drinking the beer is the experience of it, but it is. It's funny from this side of it. It's just no, kind of taking the red pill. You can see in the Matrix a little bit, but.
Yeah. Speaking of Belgian beers, though, I do remember the first time I went to Belgium, I was on this search because I had Michael Jackson's Beer Companion, which if you don't own that book and you like beer, you really should own that book.
Yeah.
And I also had his older book, which is World Guide to Beer or something like that.
Yeah.
And there was beers in there I'd never had from Belgium. And then the Belgian book he has, beers like Slow Bar, these things that I never saw in our area.
Yeah.
So when I was in Belgium, I kept trying these beers when I would find them. And I was consistently underwhelmed every time. Oh, well, that's all right. And then I have a Westmalle Double, which is a beautiful beer. And of course, it was like $4 or something. It was delicious. And,
Yeah.
And then I've never had that one. I'm so excited to try. It's okay. And then I go back to, whatever other beer that was, or Corsa Dunk Triple, which is maybe less pure because it's a contracted kind of thing, but it was delicious beer. And I came back from Belgium, and then I realized, Tom Peters did all this work for me. He had curated all the best beers in Belgium and already made sure they got delivered to Philadelphia. And so I was trying to find something he hadn't, but he had spent hundreds and hundreds of days there.
Yeah.
So
Wow. Yeah.
I was both like pissed because I wanted to do that work myself, but also kind of like, wow, it's pretty awesome.
Well, I think it makes you appreciate it a little bit more. Like you come back and like you see that what he's done.
Yeah.
At Wazak Inc., they keep your water clean, safe, and flowing at its best. From local breweries to busy distilleries, they're proud to serve over 20 spots across New Jersey, New York, and PA with top-tier water treatment that's affordable and built to last. Wazak know that every brewery has unique needs, so they tailor boiler treatment plans that keep equipment running smoothly and efficiently. And for them, it's not just about water. It's about delivering safety, satisfaction, and reliability to every client. So ready to elevate your water quality? Connect with Wazak Inc. today and let them get your system to its peak performance.
So we haven't talked about Mainstay yet. So we were halfway through. So Mainstay, 2018. Is that when you left? 2018, you leave Sly Fox and you go to start Mainstay. I'm assuming that probably at some point you wanted to start your own brewery, but like, what was that process like? Was there something that happened, or like kind of an opportunity arose, or it was just kind of the right time to leave?
Just sometimes you look around and you're like, it's time.
Yeah.
So it was time. I was really proud of all the beer we made and all the cool stuff we did at Sly Fox, and it was just, at some point the train was moving along without me, and it was like, it's time to do something different.
Yeah.
So I put some feelers out there, had some friends, and they connected me with Avram, and I kind of liked the idea of doing this kind of vision. So our brew house is really big. It was left there by Yards, so we bought it from Yards.
Yeah.
Way bigger than we need, but it would cost a ton of money to rip all that stuff out for them, and then cost us a ton of money to put all the steam piping and all the installation back in.
And you already have experience brewing on a large system?
Yeah, kind of. There's more to that story. But cool project. Certainly my partner Avram has a lot of restaurants, which was helpful, right? They could pour our beer, and I didn't have to spend a lot of time curating them. They just, they kind of were told they would pour our beer, and they like it too. It's not, we have a great relationship, but so it's good to have that foundation. And it's good to have someone that can run the restaurant, because I'm busy doing other things.
I don't think that people, you had the same kind of business model that, Human Robot and Two Locals have. What I'm trying to do right now, where you have essentially a tasting room that has a food partner. Yours is just at so much of a larger scale. I don't think that people see it as
I don't correct people if they it's the idea was Avram originally had a baker partner as well.
Yeah.
And the idea was to incorporate maybe some other partners to do makers and get more people in that space. It didn't quite flesh out that way, and the bakery partner's still doing great, but they've kind of separated ties. So I think it made sense because of that formation to have Craft Hall as a separate thing. So this place was more than Mainstay.
Yeah.
And we did, when we first opened, before we were ready to open Craft Hall, we had a Mainstay tasting room. But we don't
before you blew out the wall and everything, because it's way different than how
it was the old Yards. Your old Yard setup. It was a Mainstay tasting room.
Okay.
But then we stopped and opened Craft Hall.
Okay.
So there was a vision there that's kind of wasn't completely, didn't completely happen, but that was the reason for it. But we don't correct people if they say I love the beer at Craft Hall and don't use the word Mainstay, or if they say we love it here at Mainstay. You know, it's okay to use either word, but you know, if people email Mainstay at info and say, how can I book a party for my son's birthday? I say, hey, our food partner at Craft Hall can help you, and I connect them. So we all work together. But yeah, I guess maybe looking back, if we had known those things weren't going to flesh out, maybe it would be different, but it is what it is, you know.
That's cool. So what was the idea of like Mainstay? You wanted to, did you go in there and like, I want to then just kind of take what I was doing at Sly Fox, brewing these German lagers that I'm like, you know, kind of known for, and kind of just brewing at a larger scale within Philadelphia?
Yeah, I guess looking back,
And was it opportunistic like that, where you're just like kind of looking for a space, or was it like, you know, you had this idea, you wanted to go out and kind of like, you know, you make large scale lager brewing, so you're looking for a space like this? Like, I guess what I'm trying to say, like, when you left, was it like you wanted to, your brewery's so much bigger than everybody else's. Like anyone else that's starting, was the idea to start off at this large of a scale? I mean, work was start off pretty large also, but it was just kind of like the opportunity presented itself.
The opportunity presented itself. I think the guys at Yards, because it was a while before they found out, and they're like, oh, good, it's going to be Brian.
Yeah.
Like, less of a headache.
Yeah.
Although, yeah. So, no, it wasn't a requirement to be that size.
Okay.
But it made no sense to rip that brew house out and put something smaller and spend more money.
Yeah.
I guess there could be advantages to that, but it's just, I don't know, I guess I'm too frugal. It seemed really foolish. And when you start doing stuff like that, you think it's going to cost $8 and it costs $12. You know, it's just
Definitely.
not. Well, yeah. So I just was like, no, it's here. It's working. It has allowed us to do some contract for different people, which has been, you know, 99% of the contract business has been great.
Yeah.
So that's been helpful.
Nice.
Yeah, we could certainly make a lot more beer. So we're always looking for opportunities, but it's got to be the right fit, and people have to, you know, feel good about it on both sides, and you know.
Yeah, I know Matt, when Matt from Kenwood was here, he was working with you guys for a little bit. I don't know if he still does or not, or
No, he outgrew us.
Yeah,
so that's good. See, it's
yeah.
A stepping stone.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not at your size yet, I guess. We had talked in the past, but I'm like, I don't think I can sell 50 barrels of beer. It's like what you're trying to do. Like, I don't have the name that you have, so it's like me trying to go out or connections or anything. Like me trying to sell 50 barrels of one batch was like a large task, right?
It's tricky with the cooperage too, and depending on the footprint, for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, there's creative things you can do, but at some point it gets. You don't want it to become too much of a trick you do all the time, part of brewing and doing stuff, and it can get in the way of just making brands.
Definitely. So I guess how long did it take? I mean, the brew house was there, but I mean, you talked about how this little brew pub, you spent 3 months cleaning it up. What was the cleaning up or re-establishing process like of getting Mainstay going? Was there a lot of stuff that was disconnected, or it was pretty much plug and play?
I think it was July to September.
And it was you and Andrew at this point?
Yeah.
With Human Robot, so like I guess he had some experience doing install work also. So it was like
he's pretty mechanical, so that was.
Do you
very
remember
helpful.
when I came in?
Yeah, we were up on a tank there.
Yes, you guys were up in the ceiling, and I came in. It was like 2019 or something. It was when I was leaving Victory the first time, and I was just dropping my resume off everywhere in the city. And I walked up, and him and Andrew were standing up the ceiling. And I was like, "Hey, I want a job," and they're like, "Not the time, bud."
Well, no, I don't think we said that, but some of the things that you said were confusing to me. Like, I'm working for Victory, but I live across the street. So that was like, well, how does that work? Like,
It sucked.
But also across the street was a really big, really nice building. And I'm like, are there a lot of brewers living there? Like, it was like,
I had a
you don't have to explain, but I'm
Yeah.
like, it was just like, so I was probably standoffish because I was like, wait a minute, Victory, but you live across the street? But then, like, you know, it was like trying to, like, wait a minute, all these facts, I didn't think you were lying, but like my brain's going, how's this
But
work?
I also talk like 10,000 miles an hour, and you're probably like, what the hell are you talking about?
So I would have liked to have a beer with you and get to know you, but we were kind of like 20 feet in the air on a lift trying to like glue and weld and put stuff together. And I remember that. And we didn't have an opportunity, but I kept thinking I'd bump into you, but
It was like
it's
4
a
years
big-
later we bumped into get.
But it's like a
together
big
at
street in
NBA.
Philly. It's Delaware Ave. You don't like just stumble across people, and it wasn't like
Yeah.
walking across to your apartment building. But
Yeah,
yeah,
it's funny. So I guess it took you guys a couple months to kind of get everything up and running.
yeah, August, September, October. Yeah, 3 or 4 months.
And you started off with what? I mean, there's enormous batches, so I imagine you didn't start off with like 10 beers. Like, was it just?
Oh,
like,
we did weird things. We'd like brewed a Weiss beer and then made a New England IPA out of it. Had half of it, which really works well, by the way.
Yeah,
Traditional Hefeweizen with a folic acid rest and
I
a
think-
decoction, and then
yeah.
pump out half in the whirlpool, and then whirlpool with a shit ton of hops, and then dry hop the hell out of it. Became Harness Bend.
I made
So,
a
like-
dry hopped Hefeweizen with Citron Galaxy and some
Different
orange
yeast
peel.
though. Different yeast. Yeah.
And it was but like the base beer, like that a
Mhm.
hazy IPA and a Hefeweizen are not too similar, not dissimilar, I guess.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. So we did some of that. I've slowly moved away from doing much Portugal brewing. I'm
Yeah.
trying really hard to manage yeast and manage our schedule to like brew, a finished 40 barrels or finished 60, depending on the volume of the beer,
yeah.
just because I think the quality of the beer is better. Sometimes I don't know what it is about moving lesser volumes around in tanks. It just
I think the more stuff you move around, it's just like there's just always opportunity. I think the beers, like, keep it simple. The less you
Yeah.
touch it, the more you just kind of let it do its thing. I
Yeah.
think is
We've
always better.
we've done some things like take some Bock beer and age it on whiskey barrels. We've done some different dry hopping fun stuff. So it's not like we won't, but the initial thing was very helpful to get us rolling, but I think it's
Getting
been more
Quick action,
helpful.
Yeah.
More help, like there's a bottle, a brand that we yielded 40 barrels of. And the trick is to make it stable enough that it can be around for a few months, and still taste great and fresh.
Something I've always been curious about is the rope branding. Where did that come from? And I like how each like brand, I guess itself, has a different rope to it.
So the name of the brewery, Mainstay Independent Brewing. So mainstay on a boat is the main line that holds the mast. So it's where the mast gets its strength. And I like that we're really close to the river there, and it's but we didn't want to be kitschy, kind of like pirates and river boats and that kind of stuff, or George Washington. It just seemed too predictable. So
Yeah.
Mainstay seemed great, but the other thing is, like, people sometimes say about their favorite beer. Well, that's my Mainstay. That's the one I always have in my fridge. Like in craft beer, it's always like, oh, I'll try this, I'll try that. What do you have that's new? And I noticed that sometimes people would be like, it's Sly Fox. They still try all these things, but they'd always have our pills in their fridge. And I said, well, I want to be the Mainstay in their fridge. So there was multiple meanings to that name. So it just kind of represented that and had a nautical theme that wasn't like did make me feel like a cartoon.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then the rope came from that. We had some different iterations of the knot. A lot of stuff you don't realize that things can be copyrighted. I had to call Thistle Island Brewing. My buddy who sells beer said, "Hey, did you see this?" And I'm like, I just was like, "Oh shit." Thistle Island Brewing had the same knot we were using. So I called up and I said, "Hey, who do I talk to if I really fucked up?" And the one was like, "What? And I said, I think I treaded all over your trademark, and I'm really sorry. But I kind of want to just come clean now because I think I'm an okay guy. You don't have to know that, but I completely screwed up, and it's a trademark issue. Is there someone in your company?" So she was laughing, and she actually got one of the guys on there, and I told him what happened. I said, we would never use that if we had known you had a trademark for it, or even if I had seen your logo, I would have never used that because it's not my style. But we're gonna change it. I don't know what to, but He's like, oh, don't worry about it. I'm like, we've got growlers. We're brand new. Because use them. So they were really cool. But I'm like, yeah, we're not gonna. That's your not. You've obviously done it before us. It looks identical.
I mean, it is just
confusing.
a.
Well, this is a new one.
Okay.
We changed it.
I got it.
We then did a better trademark search. I didn't think to trademark not shapes as they go to the beer, just the names.
Yeah.
So.
How do you even go about doing that?
Oh.
Just
That's what's tough. All the questions you don't know to ask are what kill
This
you.
is, I mean, I'm doing my trademark through LegalZoom. Also, fuck LegalZoom. They
Not
have
a
been
sponsor, I
the
guess.
biggest pain in the ass. Never, dude. They suck. It's like they've been the biggest pain in the ass, and it's just like each step of the trademark process is just like, it's your next step. Pay us $150 to learn the next step. I'm like, I paid you in the beginning. You said I didn't have to pay you anymore after this. And it's just like, all right, I'm learning all these things as I'm going, but like, a lot of this stuff is like, I don't know it until
If you could start over and I could give you advice, my advice would be learn as much as you can, write down 100 questions, then take that first meeting with an attorney to see if you want to use them. But make sure they're actually the guy you want to use. Like, get references so that you don't waste that meeting. Ask them all those questions. And then come away from it and do a lot of searches on your own and say, I think I've got it all together. It's all packaged.
Mm-hmm.
Can we submit this? And I want like the quick, so this guy isn't spending time talking to you about it. It's like, and then he says, okay, yeah, it's clear, but there's likely here. Okay, great. Let's move forward. Like, because I don't think LegalZoom's really, it's like a chat BT.
No, they suck.
Yeah.
It's every step of the process. They've fucked up everything, and it's like it's been the worst thing I've had to deal with so far. Unfortunately, because I've already paid like the beginning process of this, is like the next step of that. It's like I've talked to other attorneys, like, how much would it cost for you guys to just finish this for me? And they're like, this much. I'm like, all right, well, it's still gonna be cheaper. I'm just gonna deal with LegalZoom to like get through this process. But yeah, it's not been fun.
Yeah.
There's a lot of one of the many things of like opening this. I'm like, you opening up Mainstay, like I'm sure because you were at Sly Fox, there was a lot of you were doing the brewing, but was it a learning curve? Learning like
Yeah, but you know how it is. Someone says, oh, you just do this, you just do that.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, I did this. Oh, the printer's not working. Oh, I gotta buy a drum for the printer. Like, okay, it's not my printer. Wait, what's this? Like, everyone says, oh, it's easy. You do this, you do that. Well, no, it's never easy. It's never freaking easy.
So many little.
Oh, you just do a podcast. You just put a microphone in the middle of the table and you like run your phone. Like, no, it's not easy.
Yeah, I don't know how to do this. That's why there's all these other people.
And I don't know how to do this either.
Yeah.
No, but it's
We're
like
just
that.
looking
It's
at
like
each
that
other.
with everything, right? You
Yeah.
know. And maybe it's easy for some people because they miss all the nuances and they don't really do it well.
Yeah.
So that's a problem too. If you're smart enough to ask good questions, it's harder.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess you guys launched. You guys were doing these like Pottstown brews and like kind of doing everything. But right from the beginning, I guess with Avram, were you guys were kind of already in Christmas Village. You guys were probably already in.
Not really Christmas Village. That's a whole nother partnership.
Okay.
It's not his, but
Yeah, that's a cool one. I mean, first time going to Christmas Village, seeing you guys was like, oh, that's
Christmas Village is really awesome for Philly.
mm-hmm.
It's a cool. I try to go there and buy something, and I just can't. Like I'm not a shopper, and they're all trinkets. But I'm just so happy to like buy beer and have a sausage. It's so cool for Philly. It's just awesome. But it meant the first day we kegged, we could deliver a beer to somewhere and put it on tap. And then just like any other brewery, it's bringing samples, people saying hello to them.
Yeah. So what is the team like right now? Is it still you just kind of doing everything, or do you?
There's
have
myself. There's Matt, who's my brewer, and so he but we all deliver.
Yeah.
And then there's Sean, my sales guy, and
I met him. Yeah.
he delivers one day a week right now. We have had another position of a delivery driver, and we'll probably hire someone for March.
So you guys are self distribution.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it's all just in Philadelphia?
5 counties.
Okay.
We might do more. We'll see. I don't know. I'm always back and forth. We have the volume, so sometimes to spread out a little bit would help us to move beer through quicker.
Yeah.
I just want it to be like an easy, like if people want the beer, I'd love to sell it to them. But at some point, so I don't know. We may move to another market. We'll see. It's just whether or not I don't need to sell that much. I just want it to be clear and concise and make sure there's a good home for the beer and it's not a problem.
No, I like what you're doing. It's like you're acting as like a small brewer, but like at a large scale. Like you're
It's weird. It's so weird.
You're selling to like very large accounts, but I don't know. It's kind of like the same thing that a small brewer's doing. It's just like 10 times the size.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But I can't, I have to be careful what I brew. Like, we'll bring an ale yeast and I'll brew way ahead and then wait to dry hop beers because I got to get rid of the yeast. So it's different, but it is what it is. Every advantage is a disadvantage and but I've learned, you learn.
That's like every brew house is different,
oh my God.
You have to, like so much about brewing is the production of it. And it's like people don't realize that like every brew house is different and like, recipes aren't really protected because it doesn't matter what the recipe is because you could have the same recipe at every single different, production brewery and it's going to taste different. So it's like, really learning to what fits within your system, I guess, is what's important.
Yeah, and our water in Philly's wacky. Good, but wacky. It took me 200 brews to actually get on top of that brew house. Not on top. Still not on top, but yeah.
Do you have any communication with the yards guys?
I did, but it only made things less clear. I love those guys, but it was always like, oh, so-and-so did loudering or so-and-so did. And I'm like, what? And I don't know. We always loudered in 2 hours. And I'm actually convinced, and I don't know, maybe at some point I'll talk, that what they meant by loudering was like after the first wort, because it does take 3 hours. So that would make a lot of sense. But I kept trying to do it in 2 because I'm better than them. Come on, I can do it. And I could never do it. Once I stopped trying, everything came together. The work got cleaner.
So what's the system there? It's a 3-vessel system?
4.
4? So mash mixer, brew kettle, lauder, and then whirlpool?
Mm-hmm.
And then you have how many tanks? And they're all 50-barrel tanks?
11 60-barrel tanks.
11 60-barrel tanks.
2 brights.
2 brights and then canning line.
3 7-barrel tanks.
And you guys filter?
Yeah, we have a big 10 square meter
Okay.
DE filter. I love DE filtration, man. Doesn't that beer look pretty? Come on.
It's perfectly clear. It's so funny that 15 years ago, it was like, how bright could you get beer? Like, if beer was hazy at all, be like, ugh, I don't want this. And then for 15 years, everyone was like, this beer better be hazy. And now it's like, everyone wants clear beer again. It's, I don't know. I think it's hopefully it's not a lost art. I mean, I feel like filtering is kind of its own specific task. And a lot of these new guys coming up that are just doing hazy IPAs have never filtered anything ever.
Yeah, I don't know.
What kind of DE filter do you have? Is it a sheet filter?
No,
Filter?
it's a horizontal screen filter.
Okay.
Yeah.
I guess it's all old yards equipment.
That is, and that wasn't part of the initial deal. That I was negotiating and getting to terms with the project, but everything was purchased. We didn't have a filter, and that was part of a later deal. And I'm really glad it happened because, they're expensive.
Yeah, and it's the same filter that they had.
It's one they had, but they didn't like. They spent a ton of money on it and didn't like it.
Okay.
Which is even better for me.
But you had experience working on DE filters.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's cool.
That was something back at Old Nutfield, the first brewery I worked for, that I was running their filter. And after a while, I'm like, man, I'm running their filter, and I'm the volunteer. This is turned into a job.
And not even the cool job. You're the filter person.
I liked it, but I was just like, well, at some point, if I'm filtering all day and no one else is doing it, maybe it's a job, right?
Yeah.
Not an internship where I'm helping out.
Yeah.
But yeah. But then I certainly a lot of things they did didn't make sense to me. And then when I worked for Phil Markowski, it was, oh, yeah, that's how I think about it. And then I learned, more and more. But yeah.
Nice. So what's do you have plans to like? I guess you said you were thinking about like expanding to like different markets, but like I feel like you have so much room to grow within your brewery yourself. I think that a lot of people like when they start breweries, like, all right, what's the next expansion I have to do within the brewery? But you have so much room to grow. Like
it's a little tricky because what I didn't like about Sly Fox is we eventually morphed into having salespeople that I don't want to say they had influence, but it's like we started to think we had to listen to them to figure out what we'd brew.
Yeah.
And when we did, I felt like I don't say this as a brewer who really wanted to make Rauch beer.
Yeah.
And no one would let me make it. I say it as a brewer who made 120 barrels of pills, a special pills one year, and the sales team said, we need to be involved with the decisions. And the next year, I said, what do you want? And they didn't tell us in time, and then eventually they told us, and so we rushed to get it done. It was pills. Again, oh, okay, well, we did that last year anyways. How much? Why don't we do 40 barrels? And I was just like, no, now we're selling less and trying to pull teeth from people to try to, and I get it. The market changes. It's difficult. But I didn't want to have like all these salespeople and become like a I don't know. When I was in college, I sold Cutco knives for a while. This vector marketing. I didn't want the beer sales to be like that. Like hire more people, and then we have to like push them, and then they sell 2 more kegs a day, and it's like this Ponzi scheme. I just didn't want it to be this like. And then we need a new brand, even though we don't need a new brand. We need to sell more of the old. Like, I just wanted it to be something that was kind of motivated by brewing and beer and brewers. And, there's a lot of beers that I love that I don't brew that I'd love to, but like Saison. Like, nobody's brewing Saisons anymore.
Yeah.
At least not
on a scale like.
If you want
No, it
to
doesn't
brew 50
have to-
barrels of Saison, I salute you.
very few people are brewing 10 barrels of Saison.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So like there's beers that I lament that I can't make. So it's not like I'm doing this to make all the beers I want. I certainly love every beer that I make, but
I think that
I didn't want salespeople like mucking up those waters too much. And I shouldn't say that. I don't mean any disrespect to Sean. I always bounce things off him and I need to be checked. But I didn't want I didn't want a sales team that was like 5 times the size of me.
There's sometimes when breweries get, I don't know, they kind of get lost in their own bullshit where it's like, they're like, what do we need? We need the next like new thing, but it's like not really a new thing. It's just like salespeople looking for like the quick sell for the next thing. But it's like, if you just have a good product and it's consistent, like it should be able to kind of sell itself. But sometimes it's like just chasing after the new thing. After like 3 or 4 years of doing that, then like you've kind of like lost your magic of you being this like cool crafty brewery. It kind of looks like you're kind of chasing trends.
Yeah. And there's definitely that trend in the market.
Yeah.
And certainly there have been breweries that have waited too long to innovate, but
it's the fine line between like, are you sticking to yourself and like this is what we are, or are you just not fast enough to change?
Yeah.
What do you think? What do you think about non-alcoholic beer?
It's a frequent topic of discussion.
I have a strong opinion on it.
Yeah.
I think there was definitely room for athletic, and I'm glad they did what they did. Maybe going back in time, if I was more forward-thinking, I would have, I don't know, I wouldn't have had the money to do that or the courage.
Yeah.
Because at the time, I was too busy just drinking and making beer and enjoying it. But I think that I think it's something that's a good thing. I think having good options is awesome. I think as a brewer, tunnel pasteurization is super important for that product.
Yep.
And it worries me when I see people doing cold brew coffee or non-alcoholic beer and they're not pasteurizing it.
Yep.
Certainly some people are thinking about all the facets more than others, but someone could really get sick if somebody makes a mistake. But I also wonder, like, there's probably a temptation, just like with seltzers, like, let's all do one now because it's growing.
Yeah, game theory.
But I don't know that always works. It's kind of late to the game now.
I think we're all alcohol brands, and the fact that you're telling the public that it is you shouldn't be drinking alcohol, let's make a non-alcoholic beer because that's what you shouldn't be doing. I think people are drinking less alcohol now. If the alcohol brands are 2 months out of the year in sober October and dry January telling everybody stop drinking alcohol, drink malt water that has just as many calories and is just as expensive, why is everyone just looking at each other thinking like, why are people not drinking alcohol? Maybe because you're the alcohol brand and like you're telling people that it's like you're trying to sell, high calorie malt water. It's like it doesn't make any sense to me.
You say
like
it's just as
just
as expensive, and there's no taxes levied on it either. So it's like way more expensive when you think about how much taxes with beer.
Yeah.
I agree with you, but I also think like, so I remember at one point somebody said, "Oh, I'd never mix lemonade with beer," and there was this like macho American male thing where like I drink my beer straight.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, but you don't get it because I've been skiing in Austria. It's not that they want a beer and they're putting lemonade with it. It's that they just sweat out like a ton of liquid from the body.
Yeah.
They just, played softball, whatever they did. And it's time and they wouldn't think of drinking a soda. They're going to drink a beer.
Yeah.
But they're going to put lemonade with it so they can actually like function.
Yeah.
So I think that non-alcohol beer, and you see it advertised in Europe as drive beer often, different versions of that drive, or I think it's that people really want a beer, but they're driving. And of course the alcohol limits in Europe are even lower. They drive less. They don't have cup holders in their car. So where do you put your beer anyways? But like, I also think some of it is just our weirdness in the U.S. with alcohol. We're always like, to them, it's like, I really want a beer, but I'm driving, so I'll drink this one, because they want that flavor.
Yeah.
But they've got to stay sober. So I think that's okay. But I think this massive like advertising to it can be a mixed message for sure.
And it's the same thing that you were talking about with seltzers. It's like just the quick sale, like, oh, we lost 5% of our sales. Let's just throw our whole industry under the bus to get this quick sale. But everyone does it at the same time. So of that 5%, you're only getting 0.5% or whatever because you make a worse product than whoever's just making it specifically. And it's just like, then you're also losing out because everyone that's like been loyal to your brand is now looking at you like, well, I've just lost faith in your brand because now, like, you're not even the one selling it. You're the ones that are selling out quicker than everyone else, and it's just like, everyone's like, NA is the new thing. Like, we're selling alcohol. I don't get this whole push towards let's sell non-alcoholic beer. Like, the beer industry is not going to transform into the malted beverage industry. It's going to be the beer industry, or it's not going to be there.
I mean, one of the first breweries in Germany to do non-alcoholic beer was Schneider Brewing. Makes the famous Schneider Weiss.
Yeah.
And they were like both one of the most traditional breweries and one of the most non-traditional, innovative breweries in Germany.
Yeah.
And Hans Peter was, I think he's retired now, but just amazing. And didn't talk to him too much about his ownership, but they must have been super supportive. But they put in a de-alcoholizing system, and they really found a niche in that market. And I think they did it because he loves creating things, and he wanted it to taste good and have an option for people. And I think that straight up innovation trying to solve a problem is awesome. But yeah, the jumping on it like, oh, this is moving and we can distribute it. We could, like, And that's kind of what I didn't want with salespeople that didn't really get the beer. I think our sales guy, Sean, gets the beer.
Yeah.
I just didn't want to like form this big sales team and say, let's try to do 40,000 barrels with like 8 people selling beer. And like I don't know, that's hard not to do it because you've got a lot of money tied up in it. You have to do it. So,
Yeah.
but I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I should have done that. It's also nice to have people around to drink beer with.
Definitely. Yeah, and it's I don't know. I think this slow, methodical way of just like choosing the right step is better than just like lurching at every single thing that everyone else is lurching at.
Yeah.
You either have to be fast than everybody else, which is like, who's the smartest guy in the room? There's only one person that's the smartest guy in the room. You're gonna be the smartest guy in the room every single time.
Well, I really like original thought too, and there's some things like not completely innovative, but just really well put together beer, like Sea Quench Ale from Dogfish Head.
Yeah.
Like a really good flavor, all in one flavor. It doesn't taste like I'm drinking a beer with this, a beer with that. It's just a beer.
Yeah.
But there's some ingredients that they can market there and tell a story about the beer, and I think it's kind of a new twist in a traditional style, and the whole branding works together. Like, but I actually think that I'm sure they wanted to make new beers, but like it kind of seems like something Sam would do. It doesn't seem opportunistic, just like, oh, everyone wants this beer, so that's what I'm
Also,
gonna do.
with Sea Quench, it's not just one. I think I heard he did a podcast like a month or two ago. It's also Sam like disappeared for like, I've never met the guy, but he disappeared for like 3 years, like during the whole sale, like a couple years before the sale. Like I didn't hear much about him. He was like kind of like the face of craft beer in the United States. Somehow in the last 6 months or a year, he's like jumped right back on the wagon. Like I feel like he is fully involved with everything now. Like
Well,
I think he's like back in like.
I think doing a sale like that takes a lot of time.
Yeah.
I remember many years ago Sam telling me he was just struggling with continuing to make, like there was I can imagine this. You've got great employees, they're doing a great job, and like what's next for them? At some point you need to pay them more money. In order to do that, you have to make more beer. In order to make more beer, you have to spend more money on building out the facility. And I think whatever he said to me, I realized that was a burden for him, and I really think that was real. Some people don't think about that, like, whoever it is, Joe owns this company, he's doing great, but if you care about people, it's a lot of on your shoulders.
Genuinely, concerned about them.
Yeah, and what's the next step for us? How do I do this?
Definitely.
I've also talked to brewers that like the first time someone told me they got their house off the loan for their brewery, at the time I didn't know what they meant. I mean, I knew what they meant, but now like I think I'd be like squeezing them harder, like that's huge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like well, I think a lot of people don't think about that sometimes.
Yeah, I think the spot I'm at right now is like I'm kind of like ready to open up the tap room, but like I need a lot of cash. So like, what do? I don't want to go into a debt. I don't want to put someone's house or my house on the line. Like I'm gonna have to like sell off a portion of my business, and it's like realizing like now that I'm like looking at the facts, like
you might have to do both.
Yeah. It's
I don't want to tell, like I hope someone will just do it for you.
The plan I have is I will not be going into debt. I'm just gonna be raising the money, but it's like you said, everything costs twice as much money.
Yeah.
But it's that was the biggest thing that I realized, like when I left, like I had never looked at money this way, where like you actually do need money to do anything, and it's like cash. Just because you have a great idea doesn't mean anything. Like you need cash to do anything. So it's like getting money from somewhere. That was like the biggest, like, this is, it was just like looking at stuff from different perspective. It was like,
Yeah, I mean, you don't feel it until you feel it.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, well, on that very positive note, we were like way past the deadline. But is there anything to push for Mainstay now? Like, you guys have new beers coming out. What to look out for this year?
That's a good question. I don't know. This is like I mean, we're excited to be making all these beautiful beers. I don't know.
I mean, they are very, very good. I mean, I think that, like, there's a reason why everyone knows you. It's like because you've been making beer so good and consistently for so many years. I don't know. I
mean, we're going to do another Pils this year. We already have Poplar, and we do a international Pils with all Saaz hops for a particular bar group and Standard Tap Johnny Bretta's International Bar in Philly. So I know that Pils is coming. We just kind of did a round of things. I'm actually excited to like can our wit beer again once summer hits, get another batch of our Black Cap Sour. So I think we've got some beers we didn't do this year that I'm excited to get back and kind of fit them in the schedule just right.
Nice. And then we can find Mainstay at is it just at Mainstay Beer Brewing?
MainstayBrewing.com.
MainstayBrewing.com, at Mainstay Brewing on social media.
Yep.
Cool. Well, thank you for coming on. I know we've been trying to have you on for a while.
Yeah, sorry it took so long.
And like, it's probably every third episode we have somebody on and your name comes up.
Oh,
so
okay.
It's cool to actually have you on to like,
Well, it's good to be here, and thanks for talking about beer. And
Heck yeah.
we've certainly had great conversations about beer and little times off the microphone, I guess, and camera. But.
Yeah, but definitely. Thank you for coming on. You can follow us at the Brewdat or at the Brewdat Podcast. Brewdat Podcast. Subscribe on YouTube, and we'll see you guys next week.
Great. Cheers, man.
Cool. Thank you.
Cheers.